Alright, here we are. I'm here. Just fix my camera so my automatic background remover isn't glitching out, and yeah, we're doing this. So, I mean, I've never learned UE5 yet. And so, I need to learn it for my game that I'm gonna make. So, watch me struggle with the workflow so much. I am going to really struggle on this one. Yeah, really badly. Alright, give me a sec. Alright, here's a new Firefox window. Let's do this. So, I don't know.
Hello everyone.
Alright.
If you are completely new to Unreal Engine 5, then this tutorial was made for you. In this tutorial, you will go from knowing nothing about Unreal Engine 5 to creating this beautiful world you see right here.
Sounds pretty fun.
Now, I know this might look intimidating, but do not worry. Every step in this process, from sculpting the landscape to creating the castle, will be shown in detail. This video is pretty long, but that's because Unreal Engine 5 is a big program, and we have a lot to cover. To help navigate this video, I divided it up into individual chapters. You can find links to all the chapters in the description below. In this tutorial, you will learn how to install Unreal Engine 5 and create a project, how to navigate and move objects in your 3D world, create materials and import 3D models, go over Unreal's amazing new dynamic lighting system called Lumen, sculpt landscapes and
so I've already
foliage,
installed it, as you can see.
download free nanite objects from the Megascans library, and finally we will briefly go over how to program a game using blueprints,
Hey Ben.
and at the end create the fantasy environment
My friend
you
Ben's
see
watching.
right here. I know learning Unreal Engine 5 can be tough at first, which is why each chapter in this video.
Download and create a project.
To begin, let's briefly go over there. Like again, second, but before the first time, don't worry. And down here, I just want to save this on the desktop. If you do want to save it somewhere else, then you click on the file icon right here and browse to a different folder. Now, right here is the project name. So let's call this one First Project.
All right, let's call it Learning on Stream. Learning on stream. Let's move it away from my C drive because my C drive's almost full. Let's go to my A drive instead. UE5. No, that's all the stuff. Let's call it new folder sample or learning on stream on dash UE5. Select folder. All right. Create. Let's do this. Wait, what did I select? I didn't select a blank project, did I?
And up here are some project settings. Now I'm going to leave it at blueprints since we're not going to be going over C++ coding in this video.
Yeah, I think we can do
And down here, I want to make sure starter content is enabled. Starter content will give us some nice assets that we can play with to help us learn Unreal Engine 5. Below that is ray tracing. We're not going to go over ray tracing just yet. And of course, to create this project, let's click on create. So this is what you should see when opening up Unreal Engine for the first time. Don't worry, we're going to go over what all these different windows and buttons do in just a second.
Yeah, I accidentally made AR. Whoops. Whoops daisy. Yikes. That's rough. Can we erase it? Show an explorer. Yeah. Just gonna boop. Alright. Refresh. Gone. Games. Blank. Yeah. Starter content, blueprint, desktop. That works, that all works. Checks out. So, let's get started. Alright, learning on stream. Yep. Great. There we go. Whew.
But before that, I want to go over how Unreal Engine stores projects. So let's exit out of this project, and we can see that a brand new folder was created on our desktop. Remember, I selected my desktop as the place to save our project. Essentially, this folder contains all the data that makes up our project. So whenever we make a change in our project or we create something in the project, it's going to be stored right here. Now to open up our project again, all you have to do is double click on the .u project asset right there. And that will open up your project from where you last saved it. And let's briefly go over how to navigate the user interface. Project from it's going to be project. Save our project. Help us learn Unreal Engine 5. Below that is ray tracing. We're not going to go over ray tracing just yet. And of course, to create this project, let's click. Don't worry, we're going to create. So this is what you should see when opening up Unreal Engine for the first time. Don't worry, we're going to go over what all these different windows and buttons do in just a second. But before that, I want to go over how Unreal Engine stores projects. So let's exit out of this project, and we can see that a brand new folder was created on our desktop. Remember, I selected my desktop as the place to save our project. Essentially, this folder contains all the data that makes up our project. So whenever we make a change in our project or we create something in the project, it's going to be stored right here. Now to open up our project again, all you have to do is double click on the .u project asset right there. And that will open up your project from where you last saved it. To begin, let's briefly go over how to navigate the user interface and what all these different windows do. So probably the window that sticks out the most is the viewport right here. The viewport is essentially just a view into our 3D world that we're creating. So for example, we can fly around and look at our world. We can even grab objects and manipulate them, all within the 3D viewport. Now, don't worry, we are going to go over camera controls and how to move objects in just a bit, but I first want to go over what the different windows do. Right above the viewport is the toolbar. The toolbar is pretty important because it's where we get a lot of our tools and a lot of different buttons we're going to be continually pressing. For example, what if I want to add an object into our world? Then I can click on the plus icon and scroll down to shapes, and maybe I add in a sphere and place it in the...
Let's go back.
Now, don't worry, we are going to go over camera controls and how to move objects in just a bit, but I first want to go over what the different windows do. Right above the viewport is the toolbar. The toolbar is pretty important because it's where we get a lot of our tools and a lot of different buttons we're going to be continually pressing. For example, what if I want to add an object into our world? Then I can click on the plus icon and scroll down to shapes, and maybe I add in a sphere.
So... Yeah, what happens if I play it? Oh, so you're just saying it can fly around and stuff? But I have collisions? That's pretty cool. It's gonna take me forever to reach over there. Alright, that's pretty cool. Seems a lot more powerful than Godot, which is what I'm used to. Yep. Alright, I'm done. Alright, let's do this. The landscape is pretty cool. Wait, so every part is just a little bit of the landscape? That's interesting. Alright. Open asset. So what do you do? File, open asset. So what did he do? Like, what UE is this?
Continually pressing. For example, what if I want to add an object into our world? Then I can click on the plus icon.
Oh, there's just that. Did I miss that? Yeah, I probably did. Basic. Sugar sphere. It's a tiny little thing. Oh wait, that's a trigger sphere. Oh. Shapes. Sphere. There we go. So shapes, cube, yay!
And scroll down to shapes, and maybe I add in a sphere and place it in the world to move it around. I can also switch modes. So right now I'm in select mode, which is the main mode where we can move objects around. Let's say if I'm making a landscape, I can go into landscaping mode and create a landscape, or I can go into foliage mode and start to paint foliage if I do have those assets. If you are curious, we are going to go over both modes later in the video. Okay. Now to the right of that, we have the outliner. The outliner is essentially a list of all the objects that make up my current world. So for example, if I want to select a chair, but the chair isn't in my view right now within the outliner, I can select a chair right there like that. I can also select multiple objects by holding down Control. So maybe I want to select both chairs, just hold down Control like that, and maybe also the statue right there. The outliner is also a great place to organize your world. For example, we have all these folders. Real quickly, if you want to create a folder, all you have to do is right click, create folder. Let's call this one my folder, and hold down Control. Let's select both chairs and simply drag them into there just like this. We can also hide and unhide objects. For example, maybe I want to edit something that's behind the table, but the table's in the way right now. I can come here and temporarily click on the eye icon to hide.
Oh wow. It's a lot more advanced. Let's get in and check it out. I made this. This is actually kind of impressive. What is that? What's it called? Pulse. It's kind of mesmerizing for some reason. I like it. This is actually so cool though. Alright. I'm impressed. It's cool.
The table, and then click on the eye icon again to unhide it. We can edit all the properties of a chair right here. Z-axis, which is the vertical axis, and see that we have a really long and tall chair.
Whoa.
Now, I don't like that edit. It looks kind of weird. So you can always press Control and Z in Unreal Engine.
Is there like an SVG of 3D models? Or I guess all 3D models are technically a vector in a way. But you know, like able to be scaled infinitely and stuff. Like without like poly.
And all the way down here to the bottom left hand corner and clicking on content drawer like that to bring it up. Alternatively, since this window is pretty important, you can press Control and space at the same time to bring it up and close it. So if you press Control and space, it's going to bring up the content drawer. And for example, if we want to see where this chair is being stored and maybe we want to edit the chair, then we can come under starter content, props, and right there we have SM_chair. If I double click on it, we can see the chair asset and make any adjustments if we do need to. Now we're going to go over the static mesh editor later. So I can exit out of this window by clicking on the X icon. I'm going to press Control and space again to bring back my content drawer. And probably the best example I have for the content drawer is that it's like your computer's file explorer. So just like on your computer where you have folders and in those folders you have subfolders, with the content drawer assets that make up your double clicking like this, or I can click on it right here within the folder window. Now I could go into any of these different folders. For example, the maps folder contains the map we're currently at for controls. So we know the different ways that we can view our world. So up here we have perspective. Let's say if you want a top-down bird's eye view, then we could click on the perspective button and select top like this. So to control in an orthographic view mode, you want to hold down the right mouse button to pan, and of course use a scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So right mouse button pan, scroll wheel to zoom in and out. We can also view it from the side, like maybe the left side, same controls. And of course, if we want to go back into perspective, we come up here, select the button, and click on perspective. Notice how a lot of the buttons in Unreal have a shortcut right next to it. For example, perspective shortcut is Alt and G. So instead of coming all the way up here and selecting perspective in the dropdown, I can just press the Alt and G key at the same time to go back into perspective. So right next to perspective is our view modes. So view modes are pretty great because they allow us to see our world in different ways. For example, maybe we don't want to see all the lights and we just want to see the colors of our world. Instead of coming up to lit, I can select unlit right there, or I can even select wireframe to see our world's edges and vertices. We will be changing our view modes a lot since it's a great way to debug our scene and see if there's anything wrong. So I'm going to come back up here to lit, or the shortcuts are Alt-4 for lit, Alt-3 for unlit, and Alt-2 for wireframe. So let's jump back with Alt and 4
What does it look like
to get our default view.
Whoa,
and right next to our view modes
kinda...
is the show flags. So show
That's
flag allows to
different.
turn
That's
on and
a lot
off different object types. For example, what if I don't want this grid right here at the bottom? Then I can come to show,
like
let's go find where grid is, and uncheck that to hide the grid. Now maybe for some reason you don't want to show our static meshes, and essentially static meshes are all the objects you see right here. Then within the show flags, we can uncheck static meshes, and we no longer see those static meshes. Now, obviously we don't want that, and if you ever mess up your show flags, you can bring back the default flags by clicking on Use Defaults. And keep in mind that we aren't deleting anything with show flags, they just help us see what we want in the viewport. And finally, this is my favorite viewport option, and that is Game View. So if we come up here and click on the button with the 3 lines, we have Game View all the way down here, and we can see that the shortcut is G.
That's
now, if
useful.
I enable Game
like,
View,
Godot didn't have that.
we're going to see exactly what the player will see in game. So if I press G to untoggle Game View, we can see that we have all these different widgets, and we have the grid right here. And of course, the player won't see the sun widget right here, which controls the sun's rotation. Instead, if we want to see exactly what the game will see, we click on G to hide all those widgets and features that are here for us, the editor. So just know that throughout this tutorial, when you see a bunch of widgets and these widgets just disappear, that's because I toggled on Game View with the G key. Now that we know how to navigate around our world, it's time to go over how to create new objects and move them around. So we're going to go over moving, scaling, and rotating objects. To begin,
I think we can skip some of this.
To drag out a new chair, and click on any items to deselect them. Now all we have is the statue and the left chair selected. And here's another tip. If I have the chair selected, hold down Alt and the left mouse button to drag out a new chair.
Like Photoshop.
Let's say if I want to drag this chair all the way over there, then I'm going to have to drag it across the screen, move my camera, drag it across my screen again, and it's just a huge hassle. Another way I can do it is by holding down the shift while I'm dragging. So if I'm going to hold down the left mouse button on one of these arrows and I want to lock my camera to the object, simply hold down shift and you're able to lock a camera to an object, which can save on a lot of time. So I'm going to press delete and let's create a very, very simple scene.
This is amazing.
Just to get a hang of all the
developer.
controls. So to begin, I want to hold down shift and let's select these 2 chairs, hold down Alt and duplicate them out. So let go, hold down Alt and left mouse button again, Alt and left mouse button again. Select a chair, all face inside. Be pretty perfect because we're just trying to table. Press R to scale it, and I want to elongate the table just a little bit, maybe even.
It's so bad it actually works.
Press E again. Let's rotate this. Press W, move it into the middle right there.
That's amazing.
Select the chair, hold down shift. Let's select the other chair. Middle, within our content. If I drag it in, this is exactly what I want, but right now it's in the opposite direction. So I want this to be placed on the ground. Or I can press Ctrl Z and re-enable snapping for rotation right here and rotate it exactly
or you just have a
negative
keyboard
180
shortcut to
degrees,
snapping
which is what I want.
Disable snapping. Like
So
hold
press
shift
W
while you're moving,
and let's
rotating
move
something.
it That's how
nice.
it's directly placed against the ground, like right
I wonder if there's a keyboard shortcut for that.
here.
Like making
So
it
I could try to
actually
guess
attach.
exactly where it is,
Oh, here we
or
go.
I could snap any object I have selected to the object that's directly below it by pressing the end key. So that's END, not the end letter. So press END, end, and snap it there just like that. So press R again. Scale this in both the Y and X axis, both of those. That's a very simple level. This is definitely not the best map, but it is pretty good as a first level. Now that you've finished your first level, it's time to move on to the post-process volume. So we're gonna go over how we can change the settings of our viewport camera, specifically exposure. While in the process of creating our first level, you might have noticed that if we zoom into the shadows, we see our screen gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And then when we zoom out, our screen gets darker. So that is auto exposure. And what exposure is trying to do is that it's trying to mimic the way our eyes work. So for example, if you've ever been in a very dark room and you decide to jump out into the daylight, you can feel your eyes start to hurt and everything is really bright, but slowly over time, your eyes start to adjust until everything comes into focus. And that is exactly what Unreal Engine is trying to mimic by brightening our screen and darkening our screen. So I think we could create a better example by duplicating this map and creating a little house. So to do so, let's press Ctrl and space to go into our content drawer. And I want to duplicate minimal_default, which is right now located in starter content and maps. So right here is the current level that we have. There's a little asterisk right next to it, and that tells us that it needs to be saved. So press Ctrl S to save the level, and to duplicate the level, simply press Ctrl and D to duplicate. Now let's go rename this to post process example, and let's go save it. So if I double click on minimal_default, this is the current map that we've been on. And then if I double click on post process example, this is the new map that we're about to edit. Now notice that our grid is pretty large right now. That's because we have our snapping set to 100. We can make the grid squares smaller by setting this back to 10 as its default. So now our grid is a little bit smaller, or you can press G to hide all those editor widgets. Now I want to start deleting all these objects. So simply select an object and delete it to get rid of it. And here is a little tip. If I go into the outliner, since I do want to delete all these chairs, I could hold down Control and select each chair individually, or I can select the first chair at the very top of the list, hold down Shift and select the last one, and then it'll select everything in between. So Control is to select individual objects, and hold down Shift is to select a row of objects, and press Delete. Now let's create a little hut, add in a wall. I want to make sure on all so that now the hut, we can see our screen get brighter and brighter and brighter. And then as soon as I fly out, our screen gets darker. So when I go inside, our eyes adjust, it gets lighter so that we can see exactly what is inside the hut. And then if I zoom outside, our eyes get darker. Now, this can be annoying if you are building out worlds. So to turn it off and to lock your screen to a certain brightness, we could come up to lit and all the way down here under exposure, uncheck game settings. Now we have a constant brightness that even if I go inside the hut, we see that our screen isn't.
So, whoa, that changed things a lot. I don't know if I like that. Okay, there's definitely actually some 3D on that texture. Or it's just tricking my eyes again, because that is so good. Normal maps are crazy, especially in this. Alright.
Getting darker. Now, right underneath game settings, we have EV100. If I bring this down, our screen gets brighter, and if I bring this up, our screen gets darker. So we can leave it at 0 for now. Now, there is just one issue, and that is this change doesn't apply to gameplay. To play the game, come up to the toolbar and click on the play icon. Now we are currently in game. But if we, let's say, go into the hut, we see auto exposure is turned on since our screen gets brighter, and when I leave, the screen gets darker. On a side note, if you want to stop playing the game, press the escape key to exit out. Maybe this is what you want. When you're building out your world, you have a constant exposure, and then when you're in game, you have auto exposure turned on. But if you do want to edit the exposure directly in game, this is where post-process volumes come in handy. Now, we won't be able to see the exposure changes with the post-process volume with game settings turned off, so come up to lit and make sure game settings is turned on again. And within the outliner, by default, we will have a global post-process volume for this map. So with the post-process volume selected within the outliner, we see that we have a drop-down called exposure, and we have exposure compensation. Now, in order to edit any of these properties, you want to make sure that they are turned on first, and then we're able to adjust exposure. We click settings, you process volume, and under infinite extent unbound, make sure that's turned on. So that's how we don't have to be within the post-process volume for that post-process volume to take effect. Now it's time to go over materials, but do keep in mind that materials can be a little bit complicated, especially if you're brand new to 3D art. So if you do find yourself a little bit lost throughout this course, do keep in mind that you can always go back in a section and rewatch it. To demonstrate materials, I want to create a brand new map. So to do so, let's create a folder where we're going to store all the assets we create. So I want this folder to be under content, right next to the starter content folder. Right click and select a new folder. I'm going to call this folder my stuff.
Camel case, haha.
And double click to go inside of it. Now to create a level, I could right click and under create basic assets, select level, but I want to use a level template since this will just create a completely blank level. So to use level templates, you want to come up to file, new level, and you can select open world or basic. I'm going to select basic.
Here we are. It's just a plane. Yeah, it's just a plane. Wait, no, it's not. How thick is it? It's thick.
And now we have a pretty basic level. It's just the floor right here and the sky. Now, in order to save this level in a specific location in our content browser, you need to press Ctrl and S. And it's going to ask us where we want to save this level. Select my stuff. And let's call this one material egg.
What's he calling it? I know it doesn't matter, but still.
Example level. And then select save. Now pressing Ctrl and space to bring up my content drawer, we can see that under my stuff, our level is saved. So if we ever want to go back at this level, I just have to double click and we will open up that level. Now I do want to make some adjustments. If we zoom in on the floor, we can see that our grid is showing through and it's right on top of the floor. Now this grid will be distracting where we're showing off materials. So I'm going to come up to show and uncheck the grid to hide it. That's how all we see is the floor material. Also, I think this floor is a little bit too big for our purposes. So I could use R and hover in between the Y and X axis to then scale it down like this.
But you can select the viewport. That's interesting. Oh, the sky, never mind. Alright. R. What's rotate then? How big does he make it?
Or alternatively, within the details panel of this floor, I can set it to 1 in the x-axis, 1 in the y-axis, and 1 in the z-axis. Just to give us a smaller floor. I also want to add in an object to place our materials on top of, and we can do so by pressing Ctrl and space. And Unreal actually comes with a bunch of assets and objects by default. So this is content that is not located in starter content. Instead, it's located in the engine folder. And if you don't see your engine folder right here, that's because you need to come to settings and make sure show engine content is enabled.
Wow, that's actually a lot of stuff. Functions. UI. Oh, material functions, whatever.
Now we get access to all of Unreal's default content that is contained in every single project.
That feels better.
So let's go into content, and I believe it is under engine meshes, and it's specifically SM_map preview mesh. Now we can also select engine and type in SM_mat to bring up that asset. So I'm going to drag it into our world, and let's rotate it 90 degrees, and we can rotate it 90 degrees
So what did you do? You went to engine meshes. Content. Wait, so what did you click on?
_mat to bring up that asset.
So is it just something that like demonstrates?
So I'm going to drag it into our world, and let's rotate it 90 degrees, and we can rotate it 90 degrees exactly by making sure snapping is enabled up here. Now I also want to control the exposure, since if we zoom in on the shadows and zoom out, we can see that auto exposure is enabled right now. So let's create a post-process volume. If I go into volumes, post-process, simply dragging it out, I want this to affect the entire world, not just whatever is inside this box. So scroll down and make sure infinite extend bound is turned on. Now if we go up here under exposure, make sure metering mode is set to manual instead of auto, and exposure compensation, we can bring this up. I found a value of 11 to be pretty good. Now as a reminder, if your exposure isn't changing from your post-process volume, you need to make sure that inlit game setting is turned on, because otherwise it's going to default to EV100 setting right here as the exposure amount. So make sure game view is turned on. That's how we're using.
Be back soon. I'm going to transition to that. Coming!
Thank you.